How's that for a backdrop? It's almost like the calm before the storm, you know, with what I've got going on, what I got planned, what's going to come out of this project. And obviously I've been getting behind in getting a whole bunch of your emails out to everybody, which is very, very important. But I've just got so much on the go, right? Blah, blah. On and on and on. Hey, quick note, I want to make a quick mention. You know, I always try to suggest to people to look at everything from a different direction, right? Just take a look from a different angle. Maybe look into it yourself as much as you can. And I ran into a friend of mine the other day who I basically grew up with, and he's a first responder. And we were talking about what's going on today in society with all the panic and the pandemic, etc. And we weren't talking about the actual pandemic, but what we were both amazed at the exact same time and could completely relate to was the fact that so many human minds right now trigger when they hear a certain topic come up and they react. And they don't actually listen to any words that are actually being delivered to them. They just trigger. And we weren't talking about why society or the government is reacting the way it is about that specific topic, but what we were both bewildered at was the fact that so many people react when it comes to a specific couple of topics. Maybe as an example, the US election is one. People trigger react into rage instead of just talking, chilling, kicking back and talking. Another example of what I'm trying to get across to all you is, and if you know someone who my words, who you can relate this to, possibly pass this on to them. Because what I noticed with the pandemic topic is how many people trigger react and their minds don't even take in actual words spoken. They instantly trigger and react and vent and scream out, or caps lock and vent out, or email me and go crazy with a statement that isn't even in relation to what we were talking about, if that makes any sense. Here's a quick example. I might have mentioned this earlier. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I haven't videotaped for a handful of days now, and I got so much on the go, my mind's gapping out on certain topics, certain things. But anyways, what I'm getting at is, as an example, it's amazing to me how many, not just, I mean, you'd almost think that your average challenged mind, your emotionally challenged person, your person with mental illness would possibly be susceptible to reacting and not listening and not taking in and delivering back and engaging in talk. But as a quick example, and I'm babbling, is it's amazing to me that a mind will listen to me say to the camera, I firmly believe that every single human owns, you don't deserve the right. Deserving is asking for it. Deserving, I think, when you use the word deserve, that's when you're asking an authority to give you your right. You already own it. You already own the right to look into any topic you want and look into all the information you can on both sides of the coin when it comes to any topic. And you own the right to speak out loud on the topic you're looking into, and you own the right to be able to speak out loud about both sides of the coin. Right? And that's what I pushed a couple of videos ago and a few videos ago, and do not believe the amount of people who reacted to that statement. That's all I said. You deserve the right to look into everything you can on your own. You own the right to do that before you make a responsible decision for yourself when it comes to your health or anything else. That's all I said. And all you that are listening, you would not believe how many people emailed me and within the first or second paragraph went off because, quote, I cannot believe you're promoting the pandemic as a fraud or a hoax. So it's not the pandemic or COVID, whatever, 19 that I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is how common it is today for your average human mind. I don't know what it is out of say 100 people. How many people are conditioned today to react when they hear a word? And how did they get that way? That's what I am absolutely curious about, and that's what I'm seeing. I don't give a shit about the topic at hand. What I'm talking about right now is, how do so many minds today react when they hear a topic come up. And they react, invent, and speak on the same tangent and lash out and attack. They lash out and they attack on the same tangent without actually realizing the words spoken from the person or the persons who they are reacting to and venting to and attacking. It's amazing. It's almost alarming, but I'm seeing it and I see it as a pattern. I don't know what's going on. I'd like to find out exactly how so many people have been conditioned to hear a couple of trigger words and react and lash out and go on almost violent defense of a topic when the topic they're violently lashing out and reacting to wasn't even brought up. Take a look, just watch for that. I hope I'm making some sense, but watch for that. Watch for what I'm trying to deliver. I hope I'm delivering this smoothly. Like I said numerous times, sometimes things enter my mind while I'm alone or working away in the woods, and then when I finally get to sharing with all you guys, it comes out a little off. And I don't practice this. I just hit the camera, hit record, and I let it rip, and I'll think, oh yeah, right, I want to talk about this. And that's how it goes with me. So I hope I'm making sense, but I would hopefully encourage many of you out there listening to look at society today, look at where people are speaking, and don't look at the arguments, the actual arguments. Just take a few minutes out to ignore the argument topic, but more watch for people not listening to other people and only triggering and reacting and going ballistic repetitively without thinking or taking in what another person or group of people or even a paper is saying to them. Am I making any sense? But I'm seeing that. It's clear as day. I'm seeing it as clear as day. I'm seeing people's minds manipulated to react. And I think that is very alarming. And I would like to know how so many people have been conditioned to react when a various few topics come up, instead of thinking rationally, staying calm, keeping the shit cool, and actually listening to the words being spoken when it's clear they're not even listening to words being spoken. They're just reacting and attacking. And I find that quite alarming. I don't know how you can condition a human being to react, to do that. I don't know how, but obviously you can. I think there's enough evidence to show that numerous people are being conditioned to not listen, not take in, but to only react when they hear a few certain key words or trigger words or key topics. Maybe I'm wrong, but I firmly believe I'm onto something, otherwise I wouldn't even speak out loud about it right now. I think that this is an actual thing going on today. Just take a look, all of you out there, take a look from a different angle to see if what I'm suggesting might possibly be true. All right? And then if it is true, maybe we can go about counterattacking and helping people get back to being able to think rationally and speak and exchange with their fellow men and act as a community and support each other, right? Instead of trigger, react, divide, fight, attack. Instant, without thinking or communicating. There's my rant of the day. Now let's get on to sharing some emails because I got a whole bunch. I had to get a new phone and I opened up the iCloud thing and all of my notes. I don't have any internet service in here. We only got it in the house. Anyways, I got my new phone, so what I did is I went into my email and I copied a quick 50 or 60 emails that are very recent. And I'm gonna get right to sharing them right now, all right? As many as I can. Today, I got a lot on the go today. A lot that today is dedicated to the camera and filming outside and in nature, and I got a bunch of stuff to do and trail cameras to set today, as well as make videos today for all of you to share the words of the people with the people as much as I can. So here we go. These are very recently emailed in, all right? 3 possible encounters. Hi Steve, I'd like to share a few encounters I've had throughout my life. I'm 60 years old now and I've been watching your channel for about 3 years. I can't get enough of the stories from our people. It has jogged some memories of my own. The first time I saw one of these guys was when I was about 8 years old. We moved to some farmland in a small town called Esther, Ontario. It's just a road now and still gravel roads. My grandparents bought about 350 acres and 5 families on it, including mine. Back in 1969, my sister and I were about to head outdoors for some playtime. You couldn't keep us inside back in the day. My sister was ready to head out first, and I was right behind her. When she opened the door, she started yelling, "Hey, hey, hey!" I looked over her shoulder, and there was about 50 yards from us, walking upright across the field. He was black, with a shiny but charcoal face that looked like leather. He turned and looked at us and looked as if to start walking toward us. We slammed the door shut and just looked at each other saying, "Who was that?" It must have been a few hours before we were able to check it to see if the big fellow was gone. We totally forget about him and never mentioned him again. Not long after, while we were playing on the mountain, we came across a huge circle of rocks about 25 inches in diameter, designed as if to burn a fire in, but there was no burnt wood or wood around it, and shrugged it off again. Down the line, about 20 years later, while camping with friends at Lake Wanapete, All right, there you go. I must have nailed it with all those tries. Once everyone was sleeping soundly, and I, in my sleeping bag, I could hear voices sounding uncomfortably close. I tried to listen in, but could not understand what they were saying. Their voices were deep and harsh, and I was sure that everyone was asleep. I thought I should get up and see who was awake, and then thought better of it and passed out. The next morning I asked who was up that late, and everyone said they were sleeping. I passed this encounter off too and never thought about it again. My next encounter was about 10 years later, as we were out joyriding in the golf cart in the back of Kukagami Lake. We stopped at a small gravel pit for a cold one, and I could clearly see barefoot prints in the gravel. They were quite wide and about 10 inches long. I wondered who would be running around in bare feet in the middle of nowhere in October to boot. About 2 years after that, in the same campground, I got out of bed at about 4 a.m. and started sleepwalking toward. My boyfriend must have heard me get out of the bed because he came after me and woke me out of my sleep. As I was coming out of my sleep, I yelled, "There they are!" And I had a feeling whoever it was I was talking about sunk deeper into the forest. My biggest fear is, or was, where was I going? Who was I talking about? This frightened me more than anything. After that, I started making excuses not to go back to that camp and never did again. My brother recently told me of an encounter he had when he was about 16 years old at Lake Wampu, now called Lost Lake, while he was tenting, confirming my own experiences. I live in China and believe you're opening our eyes to much more than just the big guy. And I know there are many more people watching than are liking and subscribing. My name is Debbie Brooks. Thanks for reading. Wow, Debbie, thanks for that share. I have a feeling you are absolutely lucky that you were seen sleepwalking out in the bush, possibly, right? If you follow David Plius and know what he's been talking about and sharing with everybody lately for the past handful of years. Pretty alarming stuff. And I think you're right, I agree with you too. I think there's many, many more people, well I know there's 3.9 million views on this channel just in the last 28 days. So, and that's not, I don't know how many, there's probably a few million on the other channel, but the other channel is dedicated to hunting and fishing, right, in the outdoors. But there is a lot of people following and keeping track of this channel, period. And you can't blame them either, right? It's one of the few places where it's about the people, where the people get to speak no matter what. Nobody's controlling them, nobody's censoring them to a point, and nobody's making it about themselves here. It's all about every one of us. We're all equal. Every single one of us is dead straight across the board equal here. All right, thanks for sharing again. I gotta keep reading. I haven't been in front of this camera for a bit, so I potentially can go on a few tangents today. Man of men. Steve, you are my friend. Steve, you, my friend, are a man of men. You have my deepest respect and admiration. The following is not my first experience, but the beginning of the end to my time in search and rescue. All right. Thank you so much for those kind words, and let's get at it. It was spring of '76. I was involved in the recovery of remains of the victims in the Ted Bundy serial murder case. Ugh. The search areas were Tiger and Taylor Mountains. which have Highway 18 running between them and east of Issaquah, Washington. At the end of the first day, after a short break, I was asked to go back out and set up another search grid. I loaded my string can with another 3-mile roll of string, got my coordinates and headed out. The first 15 or so minutes went by uneventfully, and it wasn't too bad of a hike up the mountain so far. There was, though, a lot of Devil's Club, and I had to stay as straight as possible on my compass bearing so that shoulder-to-shoulder search teams would not have to keep stopping and shifting side to side the next morning. I came to a swamp and said, screw it, I'm not going through it, and tied a ribbon and my string on a vine maple branch that was high enough to see, hopefully from the other side of the swamp. It took a while, but I made it around the swamp where I could get back as much on the ribbon I tied earlier. After placing the other ribbon and attaching my string, I decided to take a break and have some water and see if I had anything left to eat in my pack. Digging through my pack, out of nowhere came an overwhelming assault of fear. I convinced myself that I was just being a weenie, shoved the stuff back in my pack, and put it on, and then just stood there, not able to take the first step forward. Just a side note, I had previous encounters on searches before. You put a bunch of people in vehicles all over the woods and then send a person out by themselves to God knows where by their lonesome, and crap happens. Yes, it does. I made the mistake previously on a search when asked, "What the hell happened to you?" I explained that I'd been screamed at and ran out of the woods by a hairy man. I became the laughing stock of our unit, and word got out to the other SAR groups. Back to the story. In the back of my mind, before starting the compass grid, I thought this could be a setup. And now here I am standing on the side of the Taylor Mountain with the feeling that all the strength has been sapped out of me. I take 3 steps and all of a sudden, about 30 feet in front of me, at the edge of thick timber, 2 older trees growing in a V shape start shaking vigorously. Little branches and some leaves were breaking and falling. I was terrified and pissed at the same time. I yelled something like, "That's not effing funny." I expected to hear whoever did it to bust out laughing and walk out and show themselves. Nothing but silence. I called whoever it was an asshole and started forward again. Instantly, those same 2 trees started swaying to and fro to where I thought the tops were going to snap right off of them. They were actually crossing each other and branches and crap were falling. The diameter of these trees was 10 to 11 inches at my eye's height. In my mind, there was no way any human could have pulled this off. I think I had some lost time in my retreat as I felt like there just may be a monster was going to pull off a drumstick and eat me. I do not remember much of my retreat out of there. When I reached Highway 18, I had a bit of a hike back to base camp. I was a mess. My boots were making a disgusting sloshing sound and I was soaked. I had also lost my favorite baseball cap. I really just wanted to fall over into the brush on the side of the highway and pass out. I dreaded going back to camp as I thought that the whole gang was going to taunt me for being ran out of the woods again. Nothing happened. The atmosphere was business as usual. I went to my tent and collapsed. Funny thing, nobody while searching shoulder to shoulder the next day found my bright red Kenworth cap. I was asked though about the crazy and not quite long enough string grid. Steve, thanks again for everything you do, and I hope this wasn't too hard to read. I will wait and see if you get the chance to share before I send in more of my encounters with the big guy. I'm sorry, but I thought this would feel good to start the process of telling my experiences. It was rather difficult, and I kind of dread rehashing the ones I haven't shared yet. I really appreciate what you're doing. God bless you, Steve Isdall, and everyone at the round table. OMR Jordan, Old Man River. Okay, man, you did great. And I think obviously you're going to be able to tell now that was painless, right? You're in the right place. There is obviously tens of thousands of people here right now that just listen to your experience from you, and they have basically had something very, very similar or even much more alarming happen to them too, right? Including me. So it's all cool. So email whatever you got, and try not to let it be difficult, all right? It's time to get it off your chest. It's time to speak out loud about it. The cat's out of the bag. There's no more being scared of anyone. or the truth, especially the truth. There's no more being scared. It's done. It's out of the bag. We're all moving forward. Anybody who tries to suppress this topic or the experiences we've all had can ram it right up their asses. Period. All right? So, thank you so much for sharing that. And just so you know, some of the search and rescue people that I know personally in the coastal mountains of British Columbia, more specifically the Whistler, Pemberton, Squamish area. Twice now they've contacted me. They sent me photographs of footprint they found between, if you drew a line from North Vancouver to east side of Squamish through the mountains, they're up there on that line. Apparently there's a big trail up there and they're looking for a hiker who disappeared. They found him, he passed away. But they found huge human-like footprints in the moss and the gravel. I sent me the photographs. I could make it out. But obviously taking a photograph of any print on the ground, if it isn't snow or mud, it's pretty difficult for it to really stand out. But they sent that to me. They knew it wasn't human. They knew what it was, but they sent it to me. And then the same search and rescue people, I mentioned this before, you can Google it up, the Wendy Thompson Hut is a possible ski touring destination for a lot of people as well, summertime destination. And these same search and rescue people were up there at the hut in the middle of winter where there's literally 10 feet of snow up there, right? The snow load is ridiculous, and they found 17-inch footprints with a 6-foot stride sinking 3 times deeper in the snow than theirs, heading downhill from the Duffy Lake area, where I've mentioned dozens of sightings, going straight down towards the Mount Currie Native Community area. And those are search and rescue people too that came across that. And nobody's joking about it, nobody's laughing about it, nobody's being humiliated for finding that. It happened, it's fact, and as you know, it's fact, and we're all looking forward to more of your shares, all right? So send them in, don't be scared, send it all in. You're in the safe place now. Gotta get some more shares in here. So much to do, as usual. All right, listen to this. This is titled Florida Skunk Ape. I've lived back and forth from Kentucky to Florida since I was 8. I'm 34 now. But while living in Southwest Florida, Fort Myers / Cape Coral / Captiva and Sanibel Island, I heard many stories of the skunk ape. That's what they're called, the Florida Sasquatch. That's what they call the Florida Sasquatch. And besides the many sightings and pics available of these beings, South Florida also has a high number of other predators: bears, black panthers, boa constrictors, as well as pythons that during the hurricanes were set free due to storms destroying the warehouses these animals were raised in. Also, there are iguana and alligator, sharks, and all kinds of monkeys who are pets who were released. These two types of snakes are crossbreeding and making hybrid alligator-eating monster snakes, also deadly coral snakes. But the amount of skunk ape, Sasquatch sightings are insane. South Florida is mostly ocean, rivers, swamps, and farmland. Plenty of places for all these animals to live unbothered. I've heard you read about witnesses seeing them all over the South. These aren't apes or monkey. There are lots of monkeys in Florida, but the amount of Sasquatch sightings grow daily. I was 10 and went to a sanctuary, and the class got ahead of me because my feet got stuck in the roots under the 4-foot deep water where we were wading through for about 5 seconds. I had a feeling of panic, like a predator was near. I started to look around, and hiding behind a tree about 75 feet away was what I can only describe as an 8-foot tall hairy giant. From 75 feet or so away, I could smell the most awful death smell. My teacher came and found me, scolded me for falling behind, and when I looked back, the creature was gone. But I didn't feel like he wanted to hurt me. The look on his face was like he was afraid that he had been noticed. Anyway, my name is William Cody Clagett. I live in Nicholasville, Kentucky, just outside Lexington. Feel free to share my story. I think plenty others in the South have experienced the same things. Cody, absolutely appreciate you sharing with all the people here through me, man. There is a lot of sightings around Florida. I've been turkey hunting in Florida in the spring, and I don't know what I spent more time looking for while I was sitting beside a tree. It was either snakes, Sasquatch, probably more than I was looking for listening for a gobbler to come in. It's quite the dense jungle down there, man. Crazy terrain. It's so much different than what I've grown up here in British Columbia. And when it gets hot, doesn't it? Thanks again for sending it in. If you come across any information or knowledge that you feel can help the people, send it to me, all right? And we'll get it to the people through me, all right? Man, I saw a huge frickin' bear yesterday. Holy shit. And I haven't caught him on my trail cameras yet. And it was broad daylight, sunny day, and he was crossing the road just before I come to turn into my place. Absolute monster. And then last evening was the first time the deer didn't show up on the back deck, behind the back deck. And I could hear the horses running around out in the pasture there. So I jumped in the quad, hit the high beams, and went over there, and the horses wouldn't even look at me. They're looking straight across the driveway to the next pasture over or some timber. And so you always trust your horses, always. Horses are your radar when it comes to anything. You can't sneak anything past a horse now. And the dog was inside. No, Sarah said the dog was growling towards that darkness too. I swung the headlights and high beams of the quad in there. I didn't see anything, so I think it might be a cat, big cat. But I gotta do some trail cameras out there around the property to see what's coming here, what's living here. And then I gotta do some swimming later on. I gotta do some bit of swimming to go get to my trail cameras that I have just down the road where there's a pile of bears. Who knows what's on those cameras by now. I haven't checked them for a while since I posted that video about the eagle with 1 foot. That was the last time. And I'm also going to put some GoPros in the bottom of the river and leave them there. And one specific thing I want to leave it on is this one dead salmon. The place was collecting dead salmon. The crayfish are frickin' everywhere. So I want to throw down the GoPro right in front of that fish and leave it and see what it's like to get a couple hours of video and see just how much of that fish they can gobble up in a short amount of time. And who knows what's going to swim by, right? Anyway, babbling. It's part of my plans today, besides getting a few video shares out today, so I get back, try to get caught up with all the people that need to be heard, all right? Bigfoot's binocular birthday surprise. It's a different title. Hi Steve, after all this time listening to everyone's encounters and possible sightings, I finally got the nerve to write in. I'm sharing 2 stories that have puzzled me. Hope it doesn't take up too much of your video time. Before I get started, yes, I fall in the category of being in touch with the sixth sense, lol. Besides these stories, I have many other stories regarding the paranormal, UFOs, and the unknown voice of warning I call the knowing. I'm from California. My name is Angie. I've always been in the subject of Bigfoot since junior high, a whole 45 years ago. My dad was a believer and always hoped to see one, but unfortunately he did not. He passed in 2005. Sorry to hear that. Back in the 70s, while growing up, we watched all the good TV shows talking about Bigfoot, and of course, having seen the Patterson film, I always craved more information, so I loved visiting the library and purchasing anything interesting from the scholastic book fairs at school. I and a childhood friend were eagerly at the theater when the legend of Boggy Creek hit the screen in our town. I was not interested again until the mid-1980s. I had then become a mother of 3 boys, now all grown men. I forgot to mention that my dad was an outdoorsman and raised my siblings and I to constantly camp, travel, and enjoy the great outdoors. That being said, I too raised my boys the same way. My first possible experience was in the mid-80s. I had my 2 older boys then. My husband and I, my boys, and another couple were camping at 1,000 Trails Campground in San Diego County, California. It was the Oak Zanita Springs Campground, right off Highway 97. This campground was surrounded by an open treed range and bushes. This campground was pretty occupied with other campers. Our site was butted up to a gully that was dry but filled with a lot of bushes and rocks. On the other side of the gully was Highway 79. On the other side of Highway 79 was open treed terrain as well. We had 2 tents on our site. The campground was pretty lively with all the families enjoying the evening. After a nice fire, we settled into our tents. The other couple had their tent set up behind ours, being much closer to the gully. I forgot to mention that the couple had 2 Pomeranian dogs with them, and they were very happy dogs by nature. I don't remember how long we had been in our tents, but the husbands and my boys were already asleep. The other woman tried to quietly call out to me, asking if I could hear something walking around her tents. She said she had heard something come from behind her tent, from the gully area. I could then hear it as well, something trying to quietly move around and between our tents. After a few minutes, we couldn't hear it any longer. In the morning, while the others were making breakfast, I decided to look around our tents for tracks of something, not even imagining what it could have been. The ground was pretty solid with some areas of fine dusty dirt. I don't know if I was imagining it, but I could see a very faint human-looking footprint. It was pretty big. My mind started churning, bringing back up all my childhood interest in Bigfoot, which is how it was mostly commonly referred to back then. I had my husband look at it, but he just laughed at me. This was the end of that. Thinking back on it, another odd thing was how quiet those two Pomeranian dogs were. I would think they would have started barking their heads off, but for some reason they were absolutely quiet. In the early 2000s, one day out of the blue, one of my brothers emailed me a website of a list of sighting locations. For the heck of it, I decided to look up that area in San Diego County and by golly, there had been some. From researching more, I discovered there was even reported activity from way back in the 1800s, a legend of Bigfoot type creatures. I can't say for sure we might have been visited, but it darn well is a possibility. Also, another possible confirmation for me is the being possible is hearing from people on your reading of the same area. What more can I say, Steve? We all can't be imagining it. I've had a couple more possible head scratchers, but I'll share the one that happened to me on my birthday in October 2017, returning to California from Arizona. Before this date, though, I'd been in Washington State for about 2 months. I fell in love with Washington. My husband travels a lot for his construction job, so I traveled up to Washington to be with him via Amtrak. Oh my gosh, let me tell you, Amtrak takes you through the most beautiful scenic areas of California, Oregon, and Washington. Regarding Washington, I bring it up because I hoped to see a Sasquatch while there. I was constantly searching out sighting locations and to visit in hopes of seeing one, although it completely terrified me. I used to say to the universe, please let me see one so I could finally know for myself they do exist. My deal with the universe, though, was that this sighting had to be at a distance. Well, this is how my sighting unrolled at a distance in the 2017 story. So, in October 2017, while returning to California from Arizona, my husband and I were traveling on the westbound Interstate 10. It was a beautiful, clear day, early afternoon. My husband was driving, the radio on. I decided to pull out my binoculars and take in all the surrounding mountains of the desert that encased the highway. I was really impressed with my new little binoculars that I had purchased during my visit to Washington. Our drive was pretty silent because the radio was pretty loud. My husband wears hearing aids, but still hears everything loud. But still needs everything loud. As I was scanning through the windshield, looking further ahead at some mountain ranges we would be coming up on, I suddenly came upon a strange figure standing on a high ledge. It was far off the highway, up in an area of huge boulders, high off the ground. Right at the moment I saw it, it was in the motion of turning to its left side. For this reason, I was unable to see its face. If I would have seen it a second sooner, it would have been facing right at me. Unfortunately, the sighting had to have been no longer than 2 to 3 seconds. Even though it was a matter of seconds, I was able to see that it was a totally dark figure from head to foot, no sign of clothing, and it looked huge. As it turned to its left, it moved in what seemed like a jerking motion. In the turn, I saw the back of it. Its shoulders appeared very wide and its torso narrow. There didn't appear to be a neckline. Its arms were at its side. It wasn't grasping out to hold on to the big boulder. It was on to keep its balance, like I would have had I been on the same high ledge trying to get off of it. After turning, it looked like it took 2 strides off the ledge to get around it and out of sight. The jerky motion was from its seeming like it swayed from left to right as it moved, then it was gone. To this day, I absolutely do not know what I saw other than what I just tried to explain. Had I seen it 1 second sooner, I would have had a clear view of his face. Sometimes I wish I'd seen his face, but maybe I wasn't meant to. I think I would have freaked if I had. Thinking back on it, if it was what I think it was, the universe certainly delivered what I asked for, and on my birthday even. I remember lowering the binoculars, being in total disbelief. Basically, my jaw was hanging. I turned to my husband, debating whether or not to tell him, but I really couldn't find the words. I kept quiet about it for a week. I finally told Mom. She acknowledged my possibility. After researching this area, I tried to approximate it. It was while we were driving between Blythe, California and the outer edge of Joshua Tree National Park. I learned that this area has legends of what's known as the Yucca Man. This area also is but a hop, skip, and jump from San Diego County Campground. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for your channel. It's been my favorite. I truly believe your channel is helping many to think back on odd activities they've had in their past and for those in the present to become more aware of their surroundings. Thanks, Steve. Keep on sharing Edwin's stories. They are everywhere. Angie. Yes, they are, Angie. They are everywhere, and there is so much shit going on that we're not formally informed of when we first hit the school system. It's a little mind-boggling. And as far as that thing, when you looked at it with binoculars, from what I've gathered from numerous people emailing in, as well people I know, I don't know how many times I've heard of people who said, quote, the second I looked at it, whether it be a rifle scope or binoculars or spotting scope, that thing spun and looked straight back in my eye, or it froze. It knew I was looking at it. Just like that. Isn't that amazing? Just like that. How many times have we heard of people noting that? The moment they locked eyes on it or with it, no matter what the distance was, it knew. It's like a man that I hope, and I'm sure you're listening, man, a guy who has had some experiences near here, where I am now, and as well he's had some experiences near where I previously lived. He watched one of these things in broad daylight going down a rocky slope of a basin. He was sitting and glassing, and he said he put the scope on it at 250, I think, 250 yards, and he said that thing looked him square in the eye through the scope right back at him. And he knew it was looking straight at him through the scope the second he put his eye on it. So that's something everybody should be aware of and take note of, because it's been shared so many times from people who are not related, never spoke to each other, and don't even live near each other. How do that many people make up that one, right? But anyway, thanks for sharing that. And if you come across some knowledge that you feel will help people, please share it, okay? Thanks again. Now, what's this one? Your contribution to humanity. Hello, Steve. Your video, Military Writes in Impossible Clear Facial Photos Coming, on 8/11/2021, where you mentioned PTSD and therapy inspired me to write. First, you're doing a great service to humanity. I've never seen a Sabe, but I hope you hear me out. I was raised by a mother with schizophrenia. You started to question your own sanity and what is real or not if that happens to you. What helped me was finding a group called Adult Children Anonymous, similar to AA, but for people who come from dysfunctional homes. All right, you know, especially today is probably a real handy one. I've never heard of this, but let me read it one more time in case somebody missed it. A group called Adult Children Anonymous, similar to AA, but for people who come from dysfunctional homes. All right, hopefully that might possibly help someone. Anyway, what they offer is validation. Only people who grew up in such homes know what it is like. In the same way, you are offering validation to people who experience something they're told growing up isn't real. Then when they experience it, it shakes them to their core and they wonder if they have gone crazy. You're offering a place for people to share this in a non-judgmental way. I can't tell you how important validation is. Thank you. And you're very welcome, and I absolutely agree. Now to my experience. When I was 10, the story about the folk monster was being talked about on the news. That was the encounter that led to the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek. It scared me as a child, but the fact that it was a couple hours drive away and news died down, I let it pass out of mind. However, about 6 or 7 years later, I was operating a trap line to catch raccoon and gray fox. I would hike down to a creek bottom behind the house that had spooky feel to it. I remember walking around near a particular thicket one day when a large log fell to the ground just out of sight. I didn't hear a crack, but only a thud. I thought, why would that tree just fall as I was in this place? I checked for wind and there was none. There was no obvious reason for it to fall at the time. I tried to put it out of my mind as a coincidence, but I was glad to have my boy's axe with me. However, I remember not choosing to investigate. I just walked on. I was in the same area a couple weeks later. What sounded like a large limb fell right when I was in the same area. The coincidence seems too great, and I choose to leave that area alone after that. I think I intentionally tried to dismiss it, but after hearing the stories you share, I'm very suspicious I was being gently warned. It is strange that subconsciously I knew something was not right, but my mind did not want to connect the dots. Sincerely, John. John, thanks for that email, man. Thanks for that share where people will possibly find help or support. Sorry, I'm going to read this, mark this one as read. And yeah, there's a lot of people who experience the trees getting slammed down, pushed over, branches getting tore off. Big trees, big green trees without any wind getting pushed over and snapped off right where they are. It reminds me of a story a friend of mine's son told me of an occurrence that happened on the north side of Birkenhead Lake, camping, kids partying, and a huge tree was pushed over just outside the light of their fire. One of the kids went to lay down on the edge of the campground to sleep. He said a great big huge hand came out, touched him on the chest and jiggled his torso. Huge hand that covered his whole chest. I don't know why I just got to remember that one, but I thought I'd share it. So there you go. All right, I could rattle off a million of them myself. But let's keep going and listen to the people, all right? A note from the fan club. Oh. Dear Steve, I went overboard on grammar here, so I hope this is easy to read. I'm not an experiencer of paranormal phenomena in the woods, nor do I wish to be. I like to think there are a growing number of folks like me who are thirsting for the truth and are waking up to the fact that we've been lied to for millennia by our leaders. I listen to the stories you share with anger and great compassion for the mental and emotional suffering that some have endured because of experiences they never asked for. I wish the Sabe could determine who the money-hungry ship-for-brains researchers are and scare the pants off them to make them shut the hell up and go away. LOL. Geez, you'd think if the Sabe can disappear at will, read your mind, stink on demand, control your thoughts, and defy the rules of space and time, that they could tell the idiots from the innocents. Actually, in some of the stories, it appears that perhaps I can, but I digress. I'm a highly educated, scientifically minded, rather long in the tooth individual who spent my life being skeptical, but open-minded about subjects that beg further inquiry. I find the fear and fury of non-believers to be a sad commentary on how profoundly we as a species are indoctrinated to believe that we are powerless in our world. And I've come to realize that this is the whole point. If en masse we understood how powerful we truly are as individual beings and as a species, the possibilities of this enlightenment are endless. I absolutely agree. Well said. I think you realize, Steve, how important your work really is. It goes beyond helping fellow members of the Club of No Return. It helps to awaken our collective consciousness to the wonder of our existence and the possibilities before us. I'm so grateful to you and to David and Scott and others who are doing similar work in their respective areas of inquiry for your courage, integrity, and honesty as you chip away at the intentional mass ignorance that plagues us. You asked why so much information is coming out now. Perhaps, as some have said, the veil between this and other dimensions is thinning. Perhaps the Sabe are helping us to learn more about our own truth. Ancient Roman statesman and philosopher Cicero once surmised that occult mysteries, i.e. the paranormal, have more to do with natural science than religion. I think our cutting edge of quantum physics are proving it so. I'm looking forward to seeing your new man cave come to life, Steve, and watching the round table of knowledge become manifest. Rock on, my friend. Stay safe out there, and all the best to you and your loved ones, both 2- and 4-legged. Sue C. Sue, thank you so much for those words that you just shared with everyone through me. And those are great words to be shared. I'll tell you what. And I think we both know exactly what you mean and what I mean at the same time, right? I said it from the very beginning. This particular topic, the topic of Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Sabe, is possibly, I feel, it's the easiest example to deliver to the people to prove that we are being lied to, misled, manipulated. To me it is. Possibly because I've seen these things, which obviously shifts your whole mind instantly if you have an inquisitive mind. But it is one of the most easier topics to tap into, to show and prove to the people that we are being lied to. Period. And then as your mind keeps asking those more questions and more questions and more questions, and things start to really become very, very obvious to the point it's mind-boggling, it just makes you dizzy. As you realize how it's a cruel thing. It's quite cruel of an action to watch, to take note of, to realize that so many human beings who own the right to live an absolutely fulfilled life have been intentionally manipulated to be dumb as a frickin' sack of hammers. And that might be insulting to hammers, right? It's sad to witness, it's sad to watch, it's frustrating. I'm trying to have more compassion to the people who are smart as a pickle, because it's not their fault, right? It's not intentional. They're not intentionally dumb as a stick and lashing out and attacking innocent people. It's just how they have been conditioned, and they've allowed their mind to go and be placed into the hands of others. It's unfortunate. I'm babbling. I gotta get moving. I got a lot of filming today. I got a lot of shares I want to get done today. Let's read this one. Thanks for what you do. Steve, thanks for what you're doing. I, like everyone else, never thought I'd be writing this, but thanks for the forum. I think we're close to some age based on your 66 handle. I was born in 67. My confusion begins when I was about 2 years old. We had a small 2-story house, and my folks were traditional Irish/Czech Catholic parents that insisted that I lived in my own room on the second floor, not in their bedroom, when I was an infant. One night I heard scratching on the outside window. It was covered with one of those vinyl blinds that you had to pull down a little bit to get to raise up in the full upright spring position. I remember those. I'm sure that everyone that is our age knows what I'm talking about. Anyway, when I lifted the blind, I was met with 2 of the biggest white eyes staring right back at me. I could have been more scared when I saw this, as it made 0 sense to me. My parents come up the stairs to see why I was screaming. They tried to reassure me that it was just headlights in the window or an owl looking in my bedroom window. This is on the second floor. This was in Youngstown, Ohio, on or about 1970-ish. I think I know what it was now. We moved from Ohio to Atlanta when I was 5, and then moved to Texas when I was 10. I had thousands of acres along the San Jacinto River outside of Houston to play/fish/goof off back in 78. I stumbled across a cleared out area along the river bottom that had thousands of totally clean deer skeletons. Let me read that again. I stumbled across a cleared out area along the river bottom that had thousands of totally clean deer skeletons that made no sense to me. They do now. Wow, if that makes sense to you, you gotta share more on that, because that doesn't make sense to me. Quote, thousands of totally clean deer skeletons in a cleared area of river bottom. I've never heard of anything like that yet. This is the first time. Anybody knows anything about this or seen anything similar? Email it, all right? Thanks for what you do. I don't care if this is worthy of making your channel. I just had to get it off my chest because I asked my mom if she remembered my experience and she called me crazy. If it makes the cut, I have no problem using my name. Thanks again for everything you do. Sincerely, Brian Hudak. Brian, thanks for that share, man. And I'm glad that brought some kind of closure to what you've seen when you were a kid. It's bringing a lot of closure to a lot of people, man, this channel and all this stuff that everybody, including you, shares. Deer skeletons, why don't you go back there? You should go back to that spot if you can and have a look and see if those bones are still there. Because I know bones last a long time in water, man. That would be something else to see. That's crazy. All right, one more, and then I gotta do some shit. Papa Smurf and the Man of the Woods, not a joke. Hello, Steve and fellow club members. Use my name, William Devon. I'm 64 and a retired DED, as my wife puts it. Logger, millworker, axeman, and extreme empath, as it turns out. So my first encounter took place in Northeast Oregon years ago. I drove to the woods at 3 a.m., parked my old 69 International pickup at the log loader, climbed up on it, grabbed my can of ether so I could prime it to start, climbed down, walked up the side of the loader, and just started to spray when I heard heavy, and I mean heavy, footsteps, like a Brahma bull walking on his hind legs. Thud, 1, 2, thud, 1, 2. As I was facing the loader, this was coming from my right, headed to my left behind me. Being an avid hunter, I ran the animal through my mind in an instant. Nope, none fit the cadence and heaviness of those steps. And what amazed me was, it was walking in about a foot of dust, the consistency of flour, and still walked so heavily. I stood still and waited until it was almost behind me. And I figure about 20 feet, I slowly turned to face it, and I could see nothing, as I had no light with me, and it was pitch dark as the inside of a black cow. This thing stopped, shuffled a bit to probably face me. So there we were, him looking at me, dressed for the fall weather, overalls, and wearing a huge blue hand-knitted cap that fit over my tin hat, thus the Papa Smurf thing, as my fellow workers like to call me, and me staring into the inky blackness for about 10 seconds, and as I stood there, I mentally said, "Greetings, man of the woods," and instantly received a feeling of peace. Then it shuffled back around, continued its journey down the ridgeline. And that's where this one ends. Wow, that's something else, and I'd imagine if you got more, maybe, I don't know, if you copied and pasted this into an email and forgot to put the rest, I don't know, but that's all I got. But thank you so much for that share anyway, right? I'm glad, I hope I help you get that much off your chest anyway. Crazy, man. All right, let's keep going. I'm gonna keep her going. Child alone in the forest. Steve, I've tried to keep this as brief as possible. Thanks again for what you're doing. As a preface, I started bow hunting when I turned 50. My kids were all grown and it was something I always wanted to do. In developing my bow hunting skills, I prefer to stalk rather than stationary hunt. As part of this training, I practice perception awareness as often as possible. An odd example, 2 years ago while driving to work, I found myself thinking about one of my wife's good friends. I realized that I could not backtrack my thoughts and determine why she was on my mind. I decided that the thoughts must be coming to me externally, so I decided to call her. Here's how the conversation went. "Hi Deb, I felt like I should call you. Everything okay?" "Hi Stan, well no, my mom just passed away." "Wow Deb, I'm sorry. What can I do for you?" "Nothing, I was just trying to figure out how to tell people. Can you let Julie, my wife, know?" "Of course," I said. We spoke for a short time more about the details, and finally Deb asked me, "Stan, how long have you known me?" "About 30 years, I answered back. "Do you know this is the first time you ever called me?" she replied. I always got goosebumps and feel somewhat emotional when I tell that story. This episode exemplifies how I have tried to hone my senses, paying attention to my thoughts and feelings and then acting upon them. Here's my experience. In 2018, I traveled to San Francisco with my wife who grew up in the city. We took a drive on August 19th to Muir Woods National Park, along with my wife's sister and husband. If you've ever walked on the Muir Woods Trail, it is a stunningly beautiful area. It is an old-growth redwood forest fed by the waters of Redwood Creek, having a complete canopy that protects the verdant ferns, ancient trees, and forest life. Some quick background details that will be important to the content of this story. At this time, I was 58 years old, the father of 4 grown children, grandfather to 5, and though I'm a mechanic engineer, I've also spent roughly 25 years as a volunteer youth sports coach, mostly soccer. I'm very comfortable with children of any age. We arrived at the Muir Woods parking lot around 9 a.m. It was a beautiful day, weather was fair, and the trail was cool enough. My wife and sister-in-law decided to wear sweatshirts for our hike. The Muir Woods Trail is a relatively short loop, just under 1.5 miles, and halfway in I came upon the Bootjack Trail Loop, which adds another 5 miles to the Muir Wood Trail, winding up and into the deeper canopy in the mountain forest. As I like to stay in shape, I told the others I would meet them at the parking lot after completing the extra loop. I had my plane and carried my digital camera for the entire trek, I had my phone and carried my digital camera for the entire trek, taking pictures of anything that caught my interest. I'd seen only a handful of other people on this portion of trail. The red clay path was narrow, winding through dense trees, exposed roots, and thick fern underbrush. After a couple of miles, nearing what I believed to be the top of the mountain, I came upon a child standing on the trail, a boy around 2 years old. The boy seemed to pop up from nowhere. It stopped me dead in my tracks. The boy was 10 yards away and did not seem scared or startled. He simply stood there. I was shocked. I quickly surveyed the immediate area looking for someone and this child belonged to, but there was none. We were completely alone, along with the feeling completely bewildered. I felt torn. Part of me wanted to pick the kid up and the other part of me was terrified to touch him. I started to talk to the child, asking, "Are you okay?" Where's your mom and dad? The child answered with a single word that I did not recognize and continued to repeat that word. I thought maybe he was saying Papa, but that was not it. And it was more like he was calling me by this name. He was about 10 yards in front and above my location, still showing no signs of fear or apprehension. I'm trying to determine where the child belongs or came from. I noticed what looks like a game trail in the ground cover below me, heading up a rather steep hill to my left. The incline seems hardly possible for a child this age to have navigated, but the area above seems open. So I climb up and up to see what seemed like a campsite, roughly 30 to 50 yards away. There is a guy who looks like he is packing stuff into his car. At this point, things become blurry in my memory. I'd have never left this child alone or left him with some random person unless I was very sure they belonged together. Yet after this, all I remember is getting back on the trail and feeling like I had just dodged a bullet. I'd walked maybe 100 yards past where this all happened, and it hits me hard how effing weird the whole episode was. I turned around to go back to the campsite to figure it out and start to see other people milling around other campsites, but the camp where the guy was is completely empty. No kid, no guy, no car. I get this urgent feeling like I've been gone a long time and my wife is going to start to worry about me. So I start heading back down the trail at a hurried pace. In my mind, I feel like I need to get back as soon as possible. In retrospect, here are a few things I cannot explain. I don't remember trying to use my phone. Okay, maybe I didn't have any service. I don't know why I didn't use my camera. It was in my hand. I can't remember what the kid looked like or the father. I can't remember delivering the child to the person I thought was the parent or any verbal interaction between us. I tend to be overprotective and cannot imagine that I would not have read this guy up one side down the other for letting this happen. Looking back at my phone, I have 8 photos starting from 9:30 to 10:30 a.m. On my digital camera, I have 102 photos of various trees and scenery from the trail beginning at 9:30 and the last one at 12:39 p.m. I've matched the scenery photos I took to Google Earth's imagery of that trail. Thank you to the guy who put that on Google Earth. I can clearly see that I took a photo at 11:37 a.m., about 100 yards before seeing this child. Then I took another photo at 11:48 a.m., 11 minutes later, about 150 yards past where I saw the child, so I cannot remember roughly 11 minutes of the time that I spent with this child in the forest. I relay this experience to you because I feel like it means something. I want to know if that sounds familiar to anyone else. I want to emphasize that after the encounter, I did not feel like I had just saved some unfortunate child who might be lost in the forest. I felt like I escaped. Best regards, thank you again for hearing me out. Stan. P.S. I sent a copy of this to David Plitus at Missing 401, which actually is probably more appropriate, really, than here, because Dave's is very up to speed with experiences similar to yours, and he's doing a great job at exposing a lot of his stories and experiences, right? And he's onto some things that I'm not onto. I feel he's way ahead of me when it comes to focusing on what's important, what's possibly even more important, and needs attention. And I'm quite certain after I get a few more pieces to my puzzle filled in, I'll be catching up. But until then, I want to make sure that every single person who is passionate about the outdoors as I am has seen what I've seen in the woods or experienced what I've experienced and all you've experienced. I am absolutely adamant that their voices get heard, and that's what I'm about. And I don't know, I don't have anything I can say on that experience from me, man, but I'm sure David Plius does, okay? And maybe it'll help somebody that's listening, maybe it won't, I haven't a clue. I guess we'll find out shortly, right? Thanks for tuning in. But in the future, if everybody could, for this channel, try to keep this channel dedicated to helping you get your Sasquatch, hairy giant, whatever his experience off of your chest, or to get knowledge into us through me for the people that'll help the people. All right, let's try to keep this channel more deadly focused on those topics right there, okay? And that'll really help my time a lot and your time as well. East Texas Encounters. Hello Steve, my name is Tim. I'm from Palestine, Texas, and I have 2 short encounters that happened when I was younger. I don't remember exact dates or years, but the first encounter took place around 1980. The location was Wolf Creek Lake, not too far outside of town. Well, on a date one night, the girl that I was with decided she wanted to go to the waterfall at the lake. It was very dark and we didn't have any flashlights. As we were walking across the dam, something ran up to this steep 25 to 30 foot dam, crossing it probably 15 to 20 yards in front of us and jumped into the lake. We couldn't see what it was because it was too dark, but it was big, heavy, and running on 2 feet. We left quickly. That would scare the shit out of anybody. The second encounter took place around 1993 and happened at a deer lease along the Trinity River. A friend's father owned the property and had been told by several hunters that some very strange things to be seen, heard, and happening while they were there. So, one afternoon, my friend and I decided to go drive around the property to have a look. The land is thick with trees and tall brush with only a few small clearings. The hunters would use ATVs to get around. We were riding a large SUV down the small rough trails, barely wide enough to accommodate the vehicle. It was very slow going. At one point I noticed that something was walking alongside of us just out of sight. It was walking on 2 feet. We would stop, it would stop. We would go, it would go. I had my friend stop and turn the motor off, and it stopped with us. When we restarted the motor, it walked away in a different direction at a faster pace. I was never able to see it because the woods were so thick. As we were leaving, I got up to open the gate. Everything suddenly went silent. Absolutely no sound. It was creepy. And that's all. I hope my writing skills don't suck too bad. Tim in East Texas. Wow. There's another one, Tim. Another and another. How many times have we heard similar experience shared? The details almost identical from around the frickin' planet. Keep your head on a swivel, Tim. And if you come across some knowledge that the people could benefit from here, get it to me. Get it to me, all right? And I'll get it to the people. And we're going to keep everybody talking out loud, and nobody's going to be scared of shit anymore. We're going to get to the bottom of everything. Puzzle pieces are coming together, believe it or not.